Yeah, it's really hard to talk about the whole project without talking about the ending, but for almost 90 minutes I had this pit in my stomach, and then the last 30 seconds I'm like, oh, this is adorable.
That's very sweet.
It's very, it's a really conflicting kind of feeling after been giving your medicine for so long, and then you end with something sugary, but it's actually really phenomenal. It's like a great little trick.
I think that's one of the things that was exciting about the movie to me, was that it actually isn't really speaking to anything, that it's just kind of like a fun ride, ideally, like a movie that you're just going to the movies to have a nice time, if this is what you consider a nice time.
You don't need a message. You don't need a message all the time.
I know Micah wrote the script, right? How did it come to you and then to you two, and what made you say yes to this?
So it started with a conversation that Mike were on the phone, and he was basically just saying, I'd love to write some scenes. Why don't we develop something? I'll write it, you direct it. And we started talking about different ideas. And I, for some time, had been interested in the idea of making a psychological thriller about a dominatrix, because I think it worked into a thriller in an interesting way, with the paradox of a dominatrix both having all the power over her client, but also having none of the power over her client.
Margaret, I think that this is a very, people have an idea of what a dominatrix is, and I don't think this character really embodies a lot of what mainstream portrayals of that is. It's much more about the psychological game.
Yeah.
You have a shit ton of speeches in this thing too. It's
I love talking.
What did you sort of use as references to build her?
I mostly just spent all my time leading up to this just learning it like a play. We shot it in 3 weeks, and was that 3 weeks, right?
18 days.
18 days, 3 6-day weeks or something like that.
Yeah. It was, 1 day weekends.
Math.
Yeah. Five and one. 5 on, 1 off, yeah.
It's a beautiful mind at work.
Anyway, I didn't want to have to work very much during it, because it didn't seem like, I was just very practically speaking, just my big preparation was learning my lines. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. And then,
But we did, and I do remember
rocking it out.
in prep, I remember we had a couple of conversations about the idea that happens when someone is really, really good at their job is they are idiosyncratic and unique, and their personality often tends to not track with what might be I was saying, Michael Jordan, right? His personality might not be the typical basketball player's personality, but there's all these interesting and unique things about him. And we were thinking about the character in that way to a certain extent. So I can't speak to how that spoke to your preparation, but I remember we talked about that a little.
Just the assertion that in a contemporary world, a CEO that has sort of this kind of need and might have been exposed as employing a dominatrix for personal fulfillment, would that be accepted by, let's say, a board of directors and the public at large?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I don't know. Nowadays, it feels like people can get away with a lot.
Public at large, there's so many different opinions. Either, there's an ocean of opinions in the public on anything, right? So speaking about in the film is that he's seizing on what he feels is a salient argument in that moment to try to compete in this tete-a-tete that the two of them are having.
Sure. And Margaret, you said you questioned whether that would be acceptable yourself.
What I was thinking is that the rest of the movie kind of is contained in this box that isn't really referencing the world at all. It's very much just their relationship inside of this hotel room, and that's kind of the one point that references culture.
The core of it, I think, is we talked about this. It's a very strange love story.
Yeah.
Very at the obviously certain reveals happen that sort of leads up to that, but I think that's the sort of driving force of it in a very odd way.
Do you feel like if you opened up the clockworks on every traditional marriage, would there be a dynamic like this? Or it kind of said to me.
The unusualness of the relationship is something that's necessary as a gateway into speaking to larger ideas about role-playing, and how role-playing is probably a component of every relationship that's out there. And that's what's fascinating, right? Is you start to inhabit those roles, you find that you're able to be a version of yourself that you're not in real life, but it's also truer to who you actually want to be than the version of yourself that you are when you are.
Character seems to have underestimated Margaret's character at several turns. Even when her face when she's like, how proximate is my office to yours in this new job that I'm creating? As her demands get increasingly, it's almost like he feels a sense of betrayal, but he does know who she is. He hired her for these maybe specific tactics in the first place.
That's right.
Yeah. Thank you.
You are
incredibly
100%.
perceptive.
That's right.
Yeah, astute.
Unpack that for me.
No, but you're right. I mean, the fun thing about the script is it keeps turning. Every stuff is right that you said, And I appreciate how much